Hello, everybody. I am so happy because I have a very, very, very special guest here this afternoon, this evening. And Dr. Michael Greger from nutritionfacts.org. I consider you to be a friend, a mentor. We met I think about 5 years ago on a TV set here in Los Angeles. And I've learned so much from you and continue to do so. So for those of you who are new and who do not know the inimitable Dr. Greger is New York Times best-selling author of How Not to Die, How Not to Diet, and the soon-to-be the How Not to Diet cookbook, which I would say, if I could give my kind of seal of approval to best cookbook of the year, it would be this. This is the most phenomenal cookbook. And why it's a phenomenal cookbook and why every single person needs to own a copy of this book is that it isn't just a cookbook. It is so much more. It is something you will treasure. So we're going to get to that in a moment. Hello, everybody. We are so happy you're here. If you just joined, this is going to be a very precious half an hour that we've managed to grab Dr. Greger. He's on his treadmill as usual, showing us all how it should be done, showing us all the healthiest how not to die lifestyle. I should be on my treadmill. I was just saying to Dr. Greger that I'm about to get mine on my standing desk. But anyway, so honored as you are my mentor, because from your book, from the first, before even, how not to die, but just really being able to visit, for those of you who don't know, nutritionfacts.org is one of the most valuable resources, free resources that you can ever find on the internet. In an age where there is so much misinformation, there is so much confusion, there is so much BS, there are so many, as we say, as you say, Dr. Greger, flat earthers, that it is actually important, seriously, to be able to go to a place where there is a meta-analysis of all current available nutritional research. So we're just sort of really looking at truly the facts here. So welcome. We're so happy you're here.
I'm so happy to be here again and many, many times in the future.
Absolutely. We've had you on a few times. So tell us a little bit about why you're so excited about your new cookbook, How Not to Diet.
Well, with so much nutritional noise and nonsense out there, I just wanted there to finally be an evidence-based diet book. And to that end, I dug up, I cite literally thousands of studies, digging up every possible tip, trick, tweak, technique proven to accelerate the loss of body fat, to basically build the optimal weight loss solution from the ground up. And so that became How Not to Diet, which was released a year ago. But, I didn't want just there to be a reference book, but I want to be like a practical guide on making these kind of day-to-day grocery store type decisions. And so I talk about these 21 tweaks to accelerate weight loss, like various spices like black cumin and adding vinegar to meals and all sorts of things. It's like, well, wait a second. How do you actually actually include some of these things in our daily diet? And so that's where the cookbook comes in, which was just released. And people really seem to be enjoying it. In the first week, so it's been out for a little over a week. In the first week, sold over 100,000 copies.
Oh,
I don't think any of my books have ever sold that much that quickly. Isn't that crazy?
That is insane. It's so exciting.
And all proceeds I receive from the book all go to charity, all directly to charity. Just want to.
Okay, so did you hear that, everybody? And lots of people said they've ordered it, they've got it, they're getting it, everything else. So look, all proceeds of this book go to charity. Now, I have to say, this book is a beautiful, beautiful book. It is not, it's a beautiful hard copy book that you want to have as a gift. You want to own this. There's just something about, for me, with cookbooks, some cookbooks are a little bit boring. They don't have pictures. They're difficult to read. There's way too many ingredients. I'm so picky about cookbooks. Now, for those of you who are watching, this is indeed completely, obviously, exclusively whole food plant-based. It's every single recipe is salt-free, sodium-free as much as is possible. Also very, very, very low in oil. So in my experience, and for the women that I've worked with, how to make that delicious. Okay, yeah, challenging for sure, but that's why we need a book like this, because this shows us how to make these foods that are so delicious. And I just want to show you, everybody, look at the colors. I mean, this is our medicine. This is literally, that's not a smoothie, by the way, that is a soup. Right? That is a soup. This one here. Can you see the little post-it? I'm making this for dinner tonight. This is the ribollita soup. And so I've been putting away all my vegetables. So I've got so much that I want to ask you. And before we get to some questions, I also want to tell everybody at home that what for me is so masterful about this book and makes it such a beautiful, valuable gift for yourself that you'll just go back to time and time again, not just the recipes, which every single recipe you're going to want to use. But in the beginning, there's all the tips made very, very simple from how not to diet, which is, you know, a very long and quite complex book. But all those tips about weight loss made easy are in the front of the book. Lots of very interesting tips, one of which, and I'm not going to tell you because you have to buy the book, but one of which is adding black cumin seeds to your food, not cumin, not to be confused with the spice ground cumin.
Right.
And you recommend both, but black cumin seeds. And I'm so glad you said that, Dr. Greger, because so many of my clients say, well, how can I incorporate black cumin seeds? Because they have quite a strong taste in my diet. So you show us how to do that in this book with many of these recipes, correct?
Oh, yeah. I'd never cooked with it. In fact, I never even heard of it before. But the science was so compelling, reducing cholesterol, blood sugar, blood pressure, and your waistline at a quarter teaspoon a day. So these are, you know, totally doable culinary doses. But even then, it's like, well, how do you fit it in? And so actually, you know, I started taking it in, I put it in capsules, just as like I didn't know what to do with it. But I teamed up with Robin Robertson, one of my favorite cookbook authors. And I was like, all right, here's the parameters. I don't want just every recipe to be healthy. I want every single ingredient of every single recipe healthy. So obviously no salt, oil, sugar. You know, how do you make things sweet without sugar? How do you make things salty without salt? And these are some of the challenges we came up with. And then I was like, look, there's all these crazy ingredients I want you to fit in there. So yeah, probably my favorite black cumin. There's a really nice roasted cauliflower, black cumin rub balsamic roasted cauliflower dish. That you know is one of the ways to get some black cumin into your diet.
Fantastic. So one of the things that I want to show you all at home that is, I think, is one of the most valuable pieces of this book is right at the back of the book. After all these delicious recipes, right, as if that wasn't enough, then we get this whole section which is called kitchen staples. Now, this is where it gets really, really juicy, because for me, as a plant-based cook and as you know, somebody who coaches women to get healthy and lose weight, one of the challenges is how do we have spices and sauces and dips and things to make our food really tasty on hand all the time? And what we're talking about here, my friends, is we're talking about really, you know, dialing back. We're not talking about having sugar, oil, salt. So when you take those things out of your food, suddenly your food could be pretty bland. However, if you get this book and if you make Dr. Greger's staples, then you are completely sorted out. And I want to give you an example. So mushroom walnut crumbles, okay, which is delicious to put on lots of things. Brazil nut palm. Okay, so instead of your Parmesan, Brazil nut, and as Dr. Greger has taught me over the years, Brazil nuts for how many a day for thyroid health?
No, not that.
Or selenium.
Yeah, no. So we're talking. Brazil nuts are a very potent source of selenium.
Yes, exactly.
Well, one Brazil nut a day gives you all the selenium you need, but you don't want to overdo it.
Okay, so one a day. All right, just
Yeah.
one a day. So also there is Dr. Greger's special spice blend. And this spice blend is ridiculously delicious. And what's really notable for me is that often spice blends that you buy from the store have a lot of salt in them. So you have to be really, really careful. And that's why you really want to make all of these things yourself. There is how to make a rich vegetable broth. There is even, which I love, is I'm a huge fan of balsamic vinegar for flavoring. And in this book, you show us how to make balsamic syrup, which drizzles over veggies, is absolutely delicious. Somebody asked me the other day, how do you make a pesto without oil? You have the most delicious pesto in this book. And it just goes on and on. And then the really cool thing about this book, for instance, there's roasted garlic, how to roast garlic, which is a beautiful flavoring tool. And then underneath, you'll get little tips from Dr. Greger, such as garlic for cancer and the common cold. So as you're plowing through this book and being inspired and being able to, being empowered to make all these staples, you're learning at the same time how to make date syrup and on and on. And then gets better. After that section, we then go on to cooking, right? Now, this is no regular, like how to cook your basic, I mean, yes, we're shown how to cook our legumes and beans and things like that, and grains, which is important. But there's really interesting things. For instance, pressure steaming greens. Okay, will you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm always interested in what cooking methods do to both the nutrient content, nutrient absorption, the bioavailability. Some nutrients become more bioavailable on cooking. Some nutrients are partially destroyed by heating techniques. So I'm always trying to find out which is the best. And when it comes to greens, dark green leafy vegetables, the single healthiest food on planet Earth, then the best way to cook them is any way that'll get you to eat the most of them. If you like them boiled, eat them boiled. If you like them steamed, eat them steamed. You like them raw, eat them raw. But I was curious, like if you don't really care, like you'd have them any way you'd like, well then what is the best for boosting nutrient absorption and maintaining nutrient density? And it turns out that pressure steaming, so basically, there's all sorts of electric pressure cookers on the market now, like the Instant Pot. Well, you can steam for 0 minutes, which sounds a little funny, but what it'll do, you put a little water at the bottom and there's like a little tray. You can get these nice silicone little trays, pack it full of grains, and then press the steam button for 0 minutes. And just when it hits, when it gets to the proper steam, it automatically shuts off. You quick release off the steam and you have perfectly cooked, tender greens. And it's the cooking time and the lack of being immersed in water shown to be most nutrient preserving.
Oh, that's so interesting. And there's so many other little tips here. So I'm going to just grab a couple of questions here. So Maureen says, does Dr. Greger, do you use an air fryer? And if yes, for what?
I do. And in fact, speaking of an Instant Pot, I'm not really one for brands, but they do now have Instant Pots where you can switch off the lid and actually it becomes an air fryer. So you don't have to get a whole nother kitchen appliance. So basically, air fryer is just a fancy name for a convection oven. If you have a convection toaster oven or a convection oven, you already have an air fryer in your house. You don't have to buy anything else, but just use this kind of circulating hot air. Which kind of crisps up the outside of foods. I use an air fryer to make purple sweet potato fries. So I take them, I spritz them with some malt vinegar or apple cider vinegar, and then dip them in a blue cornmeal that's been spiced up with sage and smoked paprika, maybe some chipotle powder, onion powder, garlic granules. Whatever kind of spices you like. I dredge them in that, air fry them up, and they're perfectly crispy, wonderful. Put them in some no salt ketchup with some hot sauce in there. It's one of my favorite snacks. And, yes, I could bake them, but it would just take so long. And, I'm afraid of burning them because I get so involved with something. So I love things that turn off. So the microwave, only goes through and turns off. Pressure cooker turns off. Air fryer, it counts down and then it turns off. Otherwise, the only way I know something's done, all of a sudden the smoke alarms start going off. Exactly. I'm like, oh, I forgot that, whatever, I get so lost in my work. So
yeah. Welcome to my house. Welcome to my house. It's like my husband's like, what? There's smoke alarms going off. But anyway, so one of the things, that was a great tip, by the way, that I just loved in the book was putting vinegar on potatoes on when you're either doing your purple potatoes or your sweet potato fries, just before you air fry them. Genius. And taste-wise, so good.
And it helps the spices to stick, right? I mean, you need to have some kind of, right? And you can use like a flax, some blended, ground flax and water or something if you want kind of a thicker, crispy coating, but just to get kind of the cornmeal to stick. Yeah, vinegar is great. And you can mist it. You can put it in like a little glass spray bottle and just spray it on. I always have a little thing. Yeah. And then it evenly coats. It's super easy.
Yeah, never go without balsamic vinegar.
And then you can spritz it on air pop popcorn too, and let the nutritional yeast stick and all the other goodies.
There you go. That's the price of the book. Tips like that are worth the price of the book. So in the book, so much here. So first off, I just don't even know where to start because there is, honestly, everybody, there is so much information. You can see all my Post-it notes. That's just information. That's not even the recipes. So one of the first chapters or sections is all about soups. And the soups, I would say in your book, in How Not to Diet Cookbook, are above and beyond, I think, because the reason why for me is they're so jam-packed with vegetables. I have that ribollita in my slow cooker right now, and I could barely jam the cabbage and the kale and the beet. I'm so excited about this soup, and I love it so much that all your commentary is so great. It's like, this is ribollita, which I didn't even know means reheated. So that makes me happy because it'll be even better tomorrow. I'll freeze half of it, and then I've got like this 3 minutes. But one of the things that you say is that soups are a very important part of, if you like, a weight loss diet, correct?
Soup is the perfect weight loss food. Vegetable soup, perfect weight loss food. And I have about 5 chapters in How Not to Diet, and they all end up saying, this is why soup is such a good weight loss food, from all sorts of different directions, from eating rate to water content there's all sorts of satiety mechanisms which make soup the most satiating food. And so absolutely had to make soup a big section on soup for the cookbook. And then also most of those soups have less than 100 calories per cup, so you can use them for what's called negative calorie preloading, which basically just means starting out a meal with soup, salad, fruit, vegetables, simply a tall glass of water, basically anything less than 100 calories per cup. So for example, eating a large apple before a meal is so filling that people go on to eat about 300 calories less food from the meal. And so 100 calories in from the apple, 300 calories out. So basically an apple eaten before a meal has negative 200 calories, and you can do that with soup as well.
That's just amazing, actually, if you think about it. So that's negative 200 calories. And then I don't know if you just, I'm sure you did because you're up on research more than anybody, but the new study that came out about low-fat vegan diets, the caloric burn increase after eating just one meal. So if you're preloading and you're getting that calorie burn afterwards, it's no wonder that those on a low-fat vegan or whole food plant-based diet are losing weight. It's just a no-brainer. Yeah. So let me ask you, another thing that really interests me about this book, and it's something that I'm really learning about, is you say to deflower your diet. So can you speak a little bit about that? And then I want to tie that into Brol.
Oh, yeah. So if there is one kind of tip or one recommendation that really best sums up the entirety of how not to diet is to wall off your calories. And what that means, so basically animal cells are encased in just easily digestible membranes, which allows your body to effortlessly liberate the calories within a steak, for example. But cell walls, but plants have cell walls which are made of fiber, which acts as an indigestible physical barrier. So no matter how well you chew, you're still going to end up with calories completely encapsulated by fiber, which then kind of flushes out the other end, essentially, and also activates what's called the ileal brake, which dials down your appetite, provides, prebiotics to your friendly flora. So it's a whole bunch of mechanisms by which it accelerates weight loss. And so, but processed plant foods such as fruit juice or refined grains, or even whole grains, if they've been powdered into flour, have had their cellular structure destroyed, their cell walls cracked open, and their calories are free for the taking. So that's why I encourage people to deflower their diet, to move to not just whole grains, but groats, which are whole intact grains. So you know how there's like instant oatmeal, it's tiny little thin flakes, and then there's rolled oats, which are just plain flakes, and then there are steel cut oats, which just the whole groat cut in 2 or 3 pieces. Well, one step up from steel cut is to actually get oat groats themselves. In fact, they're so delicious I can't even go back. I can't even eat rolled oats, porridge anymore. Because they're just so chewy and wonderful. You can get barley groats and rye groats and basically any grain you want. Sorghum is a grain that I never even knew about before. It's one of my favorite grains these days. These provide most prebiotics. So both legumes, beans, split pea, chickpeas, and lentils, and these intact whole grains are the primary sources, most concentrated sources of prebiotics, which foster the growth of this healthy gut flora, which not just have to do with intestinal health, but has to do with immune function and mental health and decreasing inflammation throughout the body, helping to accelerate fat loss. So it's a win-win-win all around.
So we really need to, the takeaway here is think intact grains. And I think a really big aha is that I think a lot of people think, well, even whole wheat, and particularly, I mean, there's so much mislabeling with that anyway, with whole wheat products, but even if a product says 100%, whole wheat, what Dr. Greger is saying, go a step further, both for gut health and for everything, gut health, immunity, and for weight loss. And I absolutely agree with you that I've been eating oat groats for a couple of years now.
Right.
And chewiness of them is so delicious.
Amazing. I know.
And a lot of people say to me, I don't like oatmeal, which I get, because oatmeal can be, it's got a sort of slimy texture.
Mushy. Yeah, exactly.
I just don't think it's that pleasant. So once you get into it, and I encourage you all at home to start exploring these grains. It's funny, I was actually just at the store today. I was at Whole Foods, and they're obviously onto it because they had a whole section full of ancient grains, but they had the sorghum, the millet, the buckwheat. These are some of the grains. So talk to us about, in the book, you talk about Brol, B-R-O-L, which is a kind of mix of these intact grains used in a number of the recipes. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, so it's a mixture of the most powerful prebiotics that we know. So I looked through all the literature, all the medical literature. It's like if I had the one goal of making my gut flora happy, the good bacteria in my gut happy, what are the most powerful foods? And it turns out things like barley and rye and lentils. And so I was like, okay, well, I wanted to put all the most powerful ones together into one thing. So that became Brol. So the B is for barley. And I encourage people to do the purple barley.
Oh,
but these are barley groats. Yeah. So actually the purple barley has the same kind of anthocyanin and phytonutrients that blueberries do. So it has additional benefits, but it's a little more expensive. So it's not necessary. The R is for rye groats. The O is for oat groats, and the L is for lentils. Now, since then, you can also do a gluten-free version where you swap in kind of smol, which is sorghum. So you stay away from the rye and barley. So you can do sorghum and then millet. Finger millet is probably my favorite. There's all sorts of different types of millet, along with gluten-free oats and the lentils. And so I talk about different ways you can cook them. I mean, you can batch cook. I've got a whole big batch. I just made more this morning because I ran out. And you can use it in a wide variety of sweet and savory dishes. And yeah, so that's a good foundation for many of the foods.
And tons of recipes, by the way, to get in one. If you want to start experimenting, which I highly recommend you do with these intact grains and the Brol, those grains, you're going to have it shows you exactly how in this book, not only to incorporate it into recipes, but how to cook them as well. All right, let's quickly go on to beans now. Now, obviously, beans, legumes, etc., are the staple of really its longevity. That's what I learned from you. Is that I think you said that's one of the people who eat beans is one of the sort of highest indicators of longevity. Correct? So beans are
single best predictor of longevity is legume intake.
Right.
Of all the foods, if you want to know how long a population lives, if you just have one question to ask. Would it be, do they drink soda? Do they eat processed meat? No, it's how many legumes they eat. That's the number one dietary predictor of survival.
That's absolutely amazing. So let's just get this off the table right away. It's almost like there are two of the most frustrating questions I know. One is, how do you get enough protein on a plant-based diet? I think we can discuss that now. But lectins in beans. I know.
You're killing me. You're killing me.
I'm sorry, I had to, just in case.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, so this book came out called The Plant Paradox by this guy named Gundry. The plant paradox is, hey, plants are so good for you, but contain these evil lectins, supposed evil lectins. And so what are we going to do? And so, of course, he sells lectin-blocking supplements and it's a whole empire based on these kind of silly concepts. But so I have a bunch of videos. I think the first video in the series is Dr. Gundry is wrong, where I just go through his work and say, I mean, it's just not true based on the best available balance of evidence. In fact, some lectins are actually good for you. The toxic ones are destroyed utterly during cooking. And so by the time your beans are edible, meaning you can smush them with a fork, all the lectins are gone. All the bad lectins are gone. And the lectins found in fresh foods like tomatoes, are either neutral or beneficial, and so we don't need to worry about lectins.
All right. Let's move.
And if you are concerned, I have videos that go. I think of like a 3 or 4 video series. I go deep into lectins for anyone who really wants the nitty gritty.
Yeah, and for those of you who are in my group, you know that I post that particular video a lot.
Okay.
I get a lot of questions, but do go to nutritionfacts.org and literally just put in the search bar lectins, and then you'll have spend a couple of hours because you'll just get a lot of really good education about that. So what I love about the beans in this book is that growing up in England, okay, a bean, if somebody said eat beans, the closest you'd get to it would be a 3-bean salad. That's my only kind of entry point to beans. And
what about the traditional British breakfast? Don't they have beans for breakfast?
Oh, actually, wait a minute. Yes, you're so right. I always think of beans as kidney beans, baked beans, Heinz baked beans.
Yes.
Staple. But Dr. Greger, the beans are like this much on a plate, and then there is.
I know.
Okay.
But,
all right.
But the fact that eating beans and mushrooms for breakfast, some of my best breakfasts in my life have been in the UK. Just because, look, I get all these amazing foods. They're crazy.
Well, you know what? You say that is that when I was growing up, very often, like a dinner would be just beans on toast, or it would be mushroom on toast another night. Really inexpensive. My frugal mother, super vegetarian, and super duper healthy. Although, Heinz baked beans anyway. But what I wanted to show you all at home is that the chapter on beans in this book has the most delicious recipes. One that oh my gosh, this is one that I'm going to try this week, by the way. This isn't beans. This is the barbecue tempeh with sweet potatoes and collards. But the beans they're really unusual. So you want to try lots of different beans. For instance, there's Persian-inspired black-eyed beans and greens. Delicious recipe right here. So you talk a little bit also in the back of the book. There's how to cook beans. There's how to, that you don't have to, because there's a lot of confusion about cooking beans. It's like, do I have to soak them and pressure cook them? Nope. You make it really simple for us, right?
Exactly. No need to pre-soak.
Yeah. Stephanie says, I love mushrooms, but not sure how to cook them properly. Stephanie, you just have to cook them, basically. I mean, when I say that is you don't want to eat mushrooms raw. Am I right, Dr. Greger?
Correct. Yeah.
But
some of my like broiling is a really kind of broiling is a great way to bring out the flavor of mushrooms, like portobello. Sprinkle a little balsamic, some cracked pepper, delicious.
Yeah, absolutely delicious. And also, Stephanie, you can throw it on all sorts of, you can put it in soups. You can do a mushroom soup. You can put it on pasta. I just use mushrooms almost every day.
Oh, and dried mushrooms too. You can get these amazing exotic wild dried mushrooms like porcini, so flavorful. Every time I make boiled pasta, I throw in a handful of the dried mushrooms. They cook about the same time. By the time the pasta is done, the mushrooms are done. And you just throw it in a colander all together, and poof, you got it. And they're non-perishable, and they're cheap, they're light, delicious.
That's actually a brilliant idea. I never thought of that because I always soak them separately. I use dried mushrooms a lot, but you can throw them in the pasta water. So finally, because I know we're almost out of time, and then we could there's just so much here, but pasta. Just talk to us about pasta. A lot of people.
Oh, yeah. And so I'm so glad you brought that up because there's actually an exception to the deflowering your diet rule, and that is pasta. So that's the one food where it's okay to eat 100% whole wheat pasta, even though it's made out of flour, because of the production process, the pressure required to force the dough through the dies actually changes the molecular structure of the starch such that it's much slower digesting, has some of the benefits of grains in growth form, like in wheat berries. So big fan of pasta. Now, of course, it's not just whole grain pasta. There's all sorts of bean pastas on the market. And then, of course, there's things you can make, pasta with spaghetti squash or with, zucchini noodles, all sorts of other ways to do it. But I'm people I think were really excited to see my chapter in How Not to Diet called The Pasta Exception.
Yeah, and it's lovely actually because again, no to bread, no to that would be the deflowering. But the fact that you can have pasta, and to that end, there's a whole chapter on beautiful pasta recipes and very unusual ones. And again, remember everybody that this book includes all of the foods that Dr. Greger has, spent years researching the science behind which ingredients, specifically things like, the black cumin and many other things that you'll have to read the book to find out about, that can aid your sort of weight loss journey. And as Dr. Greger said, a lot of people could read How Not to Diet and then go, oh, okay, this is great, but how do I use these things? How do I use these ingredients in my food? So this is how. There's absolutely beautiful. As I said before, yes, it's a cookbook with, I think it's over 100 plus recipes for, soups, for breakfast, lunch, dinner, all kinds of very unusual recipes, pantry staples, kitchen staples, all this good stuff. But also it's jam-packed full of information. So a few of you I've just seen in the comments, you've asked questions about pressure cooking and cooking tips and things like that. Honestly, it's all in this book. If you have questions about how to cook these grains, these intact grains, questions about how to cook beans, legumes, even the best kinds, like Dr. Greger even goes into, for instance, I think you said lentils, for instance, black lentils are superior in their nutrition because of their anthocyanin content or their antioxidant content, correct?
Correct. Most of the antioxidants are actually found in the seed coat. So the smaller the lentil, the more surface area to volume ratio. So smaller lentils are better. So those little beluga lentils, the small black French lentils, would be the way to go.
I love them.
They're all good. They're all good. But if you had a choice, those are the best.
Yeah. And they're delicious as well. So have you got time for a couple of very quick questions?
Unfortunately, I've got to run off to another interview, but it's so wonderful.
you know what, everyone who's left questions here, do not worry, I will answer your questions because I'm in cahoots with Dr. Greger, so I'll answer your questions on his behalf.
Listen, yeah, look at the Sophie. Which way am I going? There we go.
Thank you so much. And everybody, 2 things. Go get your copy of this book right now. Order it for Christmas. Order it for everybody, your brother, your mother, your best friend, because it's just, you couldn't give them a lovelier gift. It's just a lovely, beautiful hard copy gift anyway. So please go get as many copies as you can. This is a book that can literally save lives. And that's not an understatement. It can, because it's not just weight loss, it's health as well and disease prevention. And finally, go to nutritionfacts.org. Please go there and just go and see what Dr. Greger is doing and donate, because, you know, it's a free resource. And I think every year you do a bit of a fundraiser. So if you want more of this wonderful, you know, information that is life-changing, then please pop along to nutritionfacts.org. I'll stay on. We'll say goodbye to you, Dr. Greger. I'll stay on and I'll answer some of those questions. So stay on with me. Dr. Greger's got to go off to his next interview. Thank you for being on with us. And we'll
keep up the wonderful work. I love what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll see you soon. Bye. All right, everybody. If you want to stay on, I noticed that some people said that they didn't know if this was live or not. Well, it is live. We were live just now. So let me get some of these questions in. All right. So, okay. Isn't he, Mary? You were on. He's so inspiring. It's just such a lovely, lovely book. All right. So mushroom powder. Somebody asked a question about mushroom powder. You know, it depends. You have to look at the source of the mushroom powder. If the mushroom powder is made from dried mushrooms, then it's going to be absolutely fine. But be a little bit careful, because some blends will be sold as, oh, it's a mushroom powder, and it might not be. There might be other things in it. And also, don't be confused, because nowadays there are all these medicinal mushroom powders that are sold, such as reishi, maitake. They're adaptogens, and they're a little bit different to what Dr. Greger is talking about. They would come under the umbrella of medicinal mushrooms. So those, absolutely, they're amazing for your diet. They're amazing for immunity. They're great for stress, but it's not really something necessarily that you would want to cook with. Now, what Dr. Greger didn't mention is, he said there are dried mushrooms such as, he mentioned porcini. Now, porcini are wonderful for flavor. They have a very deep flavor. So as he said, what you could do is boil your pasta, your whole wheat pasta, and throw some porcini into the boiling water, and then it's a brilliant tip, I didn't think of this, and then it'll flavor your pasta. And then when you take the porcini out, they will be soaked, you chop them up, and then you just put them on top of the pasta. Now there's another dried mushroom, which is called chanterelle. Chanterelle, I don't know whether I can leave anything in the comments here right now, but a chanterelle mushroom, ChanTerelle. Mary, if you're still on, Mary is the most amazing cook and chef and helps all my clients cook, you know, dial up their cooking techniques. But Mary, if you're still on, if you wouldn't just mind putting that in the chat. But chanterelle is a particularly a star player in terms of immunity. So right now with the pandemic, Dr. Greger says, you know, with the pandemic, and I've spoken to Dr. Greger a lot about this. He's like, you know, this is a time, this is our best line of defense right now, is eating in the way that he shows us how to eat, because we're getting we're just getting all these immune boosting nutrients, whether it's getting your purple foods that Dr. Greger discussed, your purple barley, your purple potatoes, your purple blueberries. Any natural plant food that is purple is rich in a compound called anthocyanins. And anthocyanins are an antioxidant, and they're a very powerful antioxidant and an immune booster. So think of getting as much purple in your diet as you possibly can. All right, I'm going to be quickly answering some other questions as we go here. Thank you so much. Somebody's put chanterelle mushrooms in. Thank you, Mary. Wonderful. Now, chanterelle mushrooms, you can buy them dried. They're much less expensive if you buy them dried. When you get them fresh, they're kind of in season now in California, anyways. They're very expensive, the fresh ones. I actually prefer the dried ones. They have more flavor. Often when something's dried, it really concentrates the flavor. So you can go to Amazon or somewhere else, buy a packet, quite inexpensive, a big bag of dried chanterelle mushrooms, soak them, throw them in your pasta. You can throw them in other dishes as well. You could make a risotto with barley. You could make a barley or a farro risotto. So when we're talking about rice, going to be talking 19 to the dozen here. Dr. Greger has a lot to say about rice and arsenic in rice and the best kind of rice. But in many ways, when you're making a risotto or something like that, use one of these ancient intact grains that Dr. Greger talks about, such as your barley or your farro. It makes a really chewy and delicious risotto. And that's where you could add some of these delicious mushrooms too. All right, let's see if there are any other questions. Oh, Bob, you're going to love his cookbook. All right. Daily Dozen app is great. He's got an app, Daily Dozen, yes. Are the recipes filled with a lot of ingredients and not readily available? This is Elizabeth. This is a great question, Elizabeth. So no, they're not. And they're very readily available. One of the things that I love about Dr. Greger is he where possible, he's like, you don't need to go and buy expensive supplements. You don't need to go and buy like expensive turmeric supplements or expensive whatever it is supplements. You can get, he does sort of literally breaks it down to 5 cents a day for whatever it is, black cumin, or 2 cents a day for whatever else it is. So no, there's no expensive fancy ingredients you have to get. I mean, obviously, black cumin sounds very exotic, but it is quite readily available, particularly if you go to the Asian section of some stores. You can get it also very easily online, and it's inexpensive. So I'm going to give you an example here of some of the recipes. So in the soup, oh my gosh, this looks delicious. Hot and sour soup with shiitakes and greens. So no, really basic ingredients. Like, I just want to give you an example since you asked. I'll hold this up to the camera. That's as many ingredients. Oh, it went a bit out of focus, as you're going to get in one recipe. So what I would say to you is that it's not 5 ingredients per recipe or 3 ingredients. You're going to need a little bit more than that to get the flavor in. And also, as he does, to jam pack these recipes with all of these incredible ingredients and foods for health and for weight loss. But it's not over the top. It's not one of those things when you're like, you look at a recipe and you're like, you go cross-eyed because you're like, there's no way. Plus, my friends, think about, don't forget, you can improvise. I often say this to my lovely clients. Mary is brilliant at saying this. Mary, who's on, she teaches my clients in my coaching program, and she has her own cooking classes as well. Wonderful website called The Well-Fed Yogi. But Mary is great at really teaching us all to improvise. It's like, if you haven't got the black lentils, use green lentils. If you haven't got veggie broth, use water. If you haven't got cumin, use smoked paprika. So you just get into really sort of improvising with your food. Okay, so any other questions? While I'm brand, Stephanie, I think brand, you're referring to mushrooms. Oh, that's the brand you're talking about for dried mushrooms. Yes, brand is great, Stephanie, but they are mainly medicinal mushrooms. So Stephanie, what I'm going to recommend you do is start experimenting with actual full dried mushrooms. Go get a mushroom blend. As I think Dr. Greger said, you can get blends that have shiitake, porcini, and chanterelle all in one blend. OMG, the flavor is off the charts. And talk about immunity and immune boosting. That's where you want to go. All right, keep on going with the questions, because I just want to stay on for a little while longer and just see if there's any other questions while I'm still here live. Okay, Kira says, I already have the cookbook and it's wonderful. Hi, Julie. Thank you for joining. All right, so other things that I didn't get time to talk over with Dr. Greger, and I wanted you to hear, but there's just some really great little tips here, was he goes, there's one tip, for example, does pressure cooking preserve nutrients? So that's a really interesting one for those of you with Instant Pots. And he says pressure cooking pre-soaked black beans for 15 minutes, for example, results in 6 times more antioxidant content than boiling for an hour. That's amazing. So there, I think somebody asked a question actually that we didn't get to when he was on, which was about cooking beans. But there you go. That's why everybody needs to probably own an Instant Pot or a pressure cooker. And then he also says there was significantly less nutrient loss when pressure cooking spinach for 3.5 minutes compared to boiling for 8. So basically, he is saying absolutely. You heard what he said about pressure cooking greens. Also, green beans is another one. You get more nutrient release when you're going to pressure cook that really quickly. Or a sort of form of pressure cooking also, for those of you who have the 360 cookware, is an amazing way to kind of pressure cook your veggies super duper quickly if you don't want to go to the trouble of dragging out your Instant Pot or you don't have an Instant Pot. I love the 360 cookware. Now, another thing that Dr. Greger says in his book, and I'm reading this right here, he says, so the question, he sort of answers questions. So what about stainless steel and cast iron cookware? That's a question. His answer, under day-to-day conditions, stainless steel cookware is considered the safest, even for most people acutely sensitive to nickel and chromium. So that would be the top choice, stainless steel cookware. And cast iron can improve iron status, particularly reducing anemia incidence among reproductive age women. So some people, a little side note here that's important, is if you're in menopause and post-menopause, very often you start storing too much iron, and it's a little bit complex. You may not know whether you're in that bracket or not. As Dr. Greger said, as is the case with many things like Brazil nuts, you don't want too many. I think he said 1 a day in a smoothie. It depends how big a smoothie you're making actually, because you might pop two in if you're making a whole Vitamix. But in the case with something like iron, you just want to be careful. Everybody tends to freak out going, oh my God, I'm not getting enough iron. But then again, after when you stop, you're in menopause and beyond, there is such thing as getting too much iron. And you want to think of things like if you are using cast iron cookware and you are somebody who stores too much iron, which can be equally deleterious to your health as having not enough iron, you've got to be a little bit careful. For example, some people might use cast iron to saute spinach and red bell peppers, which are very, very high in vitamin C. And vitamin C, right, actually helps you to absorb even more iron. So then you've got a real big iron whammy. So all this to say that if you are still getting your periods and you're concerned about not getting enough iron, cook in cast iron cookware. And you might want to water saute vitamin C rich foods in there. That's a great way of getting your iron. If you're post-menopause, be a little bit careful. Thank you very much. Somebody's put in a link for the 360 cookware, which is, you get a coupon if you go, if you click this link, and if you use the coupon code Sophie20, life-changing cookware. Now, here's what's amazing. I've actually got to get Dr. Greger onto it. I've got to. I think maybe that's going to be my Christmas present to him, because what's so great about it is that it's called water vapor technology. And he talked a little bit about not wanting water loss with those vegetables. For instance, if you're cooking greens, you don't want water loss. The great thing about 360 cookware is you pop your greens in the pot, or your broccoli, or whatever it is, with a couple of tablespoons of water. That's it. So very little nutrients are lost, and it sort of pressure cooks as well in 2 or 3 minutes. I like it. It's just for ease of use. It's really great. All right, so tips about iron. Anything else? Do we need any more nutritional tips while I'm on, and I'm on a bit of a roll here? Looking through this book. Oh, there was a great question that somebody asked in the comments before the live when I, promoted this live stream about the Trendelenburg effect, which is really interesting that Dr. Greger talks about, which is where you invert your bed. So your feet are higher than your head. And there's, something in that to do with weight loss, but it's a little bit too complicated for me to get into here. And I did want to talk to you, Dr. Greger, about that, but we'll talk to Dr. Greger when we have him on in January. Hopefully we're going to have him on in January. Okay, Geneviève, I'm so glad you're here. You're going to love the book. And Geneviève, you are such an incredible photographer that you're going to be really inspired by the photography in this book. I think that's sort of half the battle, isn't it, with a cookery book? I like to go to bed with a cookery book and flick through it and just get inspired by all these amazing recipes. There's one here, which is root vegetable mac and cheese. Look at that. This camera is not giving justice to that at all. Oh my gosh, you're gonna love it. Okay, somebody goes, my 40-year-old townhouse cookware, which is no longer available, works the same way as the 360 cookware. Amazing. So you heard what Dr. Greger said about pasta, so you can still have your pasta. One thing that he talked a little bit about, ladies, and if there are any gents watching, he talks about it both in this book and in his How Not to Diet book, is preloading. And really what it is you're eating as much water-filled water, literally you could do 2 glasses of water before you eat a meal, 20 minutes or so before you eat a meal. That's preloading. But he will also say you can preload with water. I actually recommend preloading with water-filled vegetables, such as your non-starchy veggies. That's another really good way, which would be a salad. That's a great way to preload. He talked about eating an apple before a meal. So preloading is really great. The other thing that Dr. Greger doesn't mention, which I absolutely love, is that if you drink a glass of water, like a good 8-ounce glass of water, about 20 minutes or 15 to 20 minutes before a meal, you could put a little spritz of lemon juice in. I recommend that it's room temperature. And not only does it preload, but it also fires up your digestive enzymes. So you're basically priming your stomach, which as we get older, our digestive enzymes diminish. So you're priming your digestive enzymes, almost going, come on, we've got food coming in, ready to really adequately digest your food. Karen, organic pasta, I assume, no glyphosates. Absolutely. And that's a very good point, Karen. We don't want glyphosates. Dr. Greger talks a lot about gut health, as do many people that I bring on an interview here. And he's always looking for the best foods for gut health. And one of the things that is deleterious to gut health are certain pesticides. And so we want to be very, very careful about that. You can look at the environmental working groups, Dirty Dozen, to see the fruits and vegetables that you absolutely must avoid buying conventional. And there's like 12 to 15 of them. I actually did a post today about how these guys here, my favorite candy at this time of year, satsumas, clementines, tangerines, love them, about how they need to be organic because the USDA pesticide data committee found that there were over 14 pesticide residues on that particular fruit. So you really want to make sure that that is organic where possible. Christy, great question. How to increase potassium? Really easy. You increase potassium by eating lots of beautiful fruits. So your bananas, your mango, your pineapple contain a very, very high level of potassium. And don't be afraid of bananas. Some people are really afraid of fruits. Unfortunately, keto diets and all these, low carb diets have given fruit such a bad rap. But Dr. Greger said, as for those of you that were on for his interview, he said that one of the highest predictors of longevity were beans and legumes. Ask any population that boasts the highest level of healthy centenarians, they're going to have beans and legumes as being an absolute staple of their diet. But what he didn't say, because he and I talk a lot, and I know this as well, is that Fruit is second to that. It's beans, legumes, and fruit. So don't not have your fruits. Don't be afraid of your fruits, even if you're pre-diabetic, even if you're diabetic. You know, this new study that came out that I alluded to in my interview with Dr. Greger, I'm just about to, in fact, I've just shot a YouTube video. It'll come out in a couple of weeks' time, all about this new study of caloric burn on a vegan, low-fat diet. It's fascinating, this study. But as part of the study, the participants that, you know, lost weight and literally boosted their metabolism after the age of 50, ate a diet that was very high in carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, which includes fruit, and complex carbs such as sweet potatoes and root vegetables and things like that. So don't be afraid of your carbs, complex carbs, I should say, and don't be afraid of fruit. And do eat fruit, because that's how you're going to get your potassium. Okay. Yeah, fruit was my dessert when growing up. Literally, my mum at the end of a meal would literally put a fruit bowl on the table, and it was like, there you go, take your pick. That's what dessert was. Pros and cons to alkalizing our bodies. This is a really good question. You know, it's all pro. Basically, if you go and look at the research, you can go look at Dr. Greger's research. I've done a lot of research about alkalizing your diet. Had a great question actually from Jewel, who's a beautiful member of our community, about alkalizing your diet. Basically, as we get older, our blood becomes less alkaline. There's more sort of acid in acidity in our blood as we get older, and this can affect kidney function, and it can affect other physiological functions. Okay, so particularly after the age of 50, we really want to look at how can we best alkalinize our body. Simple, same answer to the potassium question, is just eat tons of fruits and veggies. That's how you alkalinize your blood. And absolutely, after the age of 50, that's absolutely what we need to be doing for so many things, for bone strength, to prevent osteoporosis, to keep our kidney function really in tip-top condition. All right, so hopefully that helps you with that. Okay, this is Anita. What about legumes being hard to digest and causing issues? So there are lots of different things that you can do. I think when you're cooking your legumes, such as your lentils and beans, you could pop a bay leaf in there, a couple of bay leaves. That can sometimes really help. What I say to my clients who are new, or people who are new to eating beans and legumes, is don't go crazy. Don't try and suddenly go from eating not many beans and legumes to suddenly going, oh my gosh, I'm going to eat tons of beans every day, because your gut has to get used to it. It's like, it would be like going to the gym and having never lifted weights and saying you've got to start off lifting 100-pound weights every single day. Your body's going to go, no can do, I can't do that. It's the same with beans. So the good bacteria in your gut, and there's lots of different kinds of bacteria in your gut that digest different plant foods, different starches and different sugars. And so you slowly feed these beans and legumes into your gut so that the good bacteria that are needed to digest those particular starches kind of do their push-ups, do their press-ups, get strong and multiply, have children, so that there are lots of them and they're ready when those beans come in to go, okay, we can easily digest. So if you're having problems, you can add bay leaves, you can go very, very slow, start with a little bit of hummus, and then just start going very, very slow, just a little bit, maybe some beans in a soup, maybe puree some beans in a soup, a white bean pureed soup or something like that, or white bean dip. So you could go that way. The one other thing is, if you continue to have problems, then you might want to go for a digestive enzyme. And there are certain digestive enzymes that are useful for, particularly for digesting beans. So you can look at doing those. So those are some tips for you. All right, so let's see if there are any other questions here. You wish you could get into a study. Well, you could look that up. Maybe you can. Okay, Stephanie, anything to help endometriosis and ovarian cysts, nutrition-wise? Yes, absolutely, Stephanie. And Stephanie, I don't know whether you've got the book by Dr. Neil Bernard, who I've done an interview with, or you saw his interview. I think it's Your Hormones in Balance, I think it's called. And he really goes into all the kind of reproductive, cysts and ovarian cysts and fibroids and PCOS and all of that stuff. So go get his book for sure. But I will say, Stephanie, that again, it's really, really simple from his point of view, where he really zones in and specializes in looking at women's hormonal issues and such. Again, a whole food plant-based diet, my love. Get rid of all the dairy, get rid of all the animal products. That is absolutely the way to go. And you should be really, really secure and know that you're going in the right direction by eating an exclusively whole food plant-based diet. All right, so any other questions? I'm just looking here. Anita, does Dr. Greg address digestive issues in regards to eating too many legumes? I think I've just answered that question for you. He doesn't directly address it, but I directly address it. Okay, Leah, my daughter is allergic to all mushrooms. I wish there was something she could have for the same benefits. Unfortunately, there are very, very specific benefits to mushrooms, the beta glucans. They are in other foods as well, but I know it's a pain. Some people, very few people, it's very rare to have those allergies. But there's lots of other things that she can eat for immunity. So that's the good news. All right. Any other questions before I log off for the night? And for those of you, by the way, who are really stuck on your health and weight loss journey, and you just are like, I just don't know how to put all this together. And put all this together because, as those of you who have worked with me, Genevieve and Mary and some of my beautiful clients are on, it's really not just about food. It's a lot of other things that come into play. I know Dr. Greger zeroes in on just the food and the diet, but a lot of other things come into play. Creating a lifestyle that really puts every single piece together for optimum health, wellness, and happiness. So if you're struggling along that journey, then do check out my masterclass, my free masterclass. And I go through the sort of 5 shifts that a lot of my clients make. So that's something you might just want to look into. All right, so the name of, hello, Patricia's on. Patricia, you missed Dr. Greger if you've just come on. And if Catherine, if you're on, if you wouldn't mind just popping in that link to that masterclass, that would be great. So this is the name of his book. It is called How Not to Diet Cookbook. That's it. Over 100 recipes and literally jam-packed with information. Christy, I lost 40 pounds and seem stuck. Go look at my masterclass, Christy, because you know that we might be able to help you. Oh, you heard it. Great. Isn't he great? Isn't he fantastic? And interesting, I think, Patricia, you have experimented a little bit with intact grains, haven't you? Such as I think oat groats. I think, Patricia, you've been experimenting with oat groats, and you're such a great experimenter, Patricia, that you might even want to now start experimenting with some of those other grains that he talks about, such as the sorghum, the millet. You're going to love this cookbook, Patricia. I can't wait to see your photographs of your renditions of this. Patricia's in my beautiful Go Up group, and I just can't wait to see you go wild with this because I know you love cooking. All right. Is it best to buy the book on his website? I don't really think it matters, to be honest with you, whether you get it on Amazon or his website. He's still going to get all the proceeds of his book, go to charity. Dr. Greger, by the way, and I'm going to finish on this. I'm just going to finish on this. Dr. Greger, who, as many of you know, has been a huge mentor of mine for many years, and I consider him to be a very good friend, and Dr. Neil Bernard. So these two, notably, these two doctors, they are both, what you may not know about them is that they are both animal lovers beyond anything that you could. They are just passionate about in their lifetime doing whatever they can do to minimize suffering, animal suffering. And it's just absolutely wonderful. If you knew what they did sort of behind the scenes to put out that message, particularly Dr. Neil Barnard, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, his big thing is, which is so close to my heart, is taking animals out of medical testing when it's totally unnecessary. And he's done a massive amount on policy, on a policy level to stop this happening. And it's just heartbreaking when you see what goes on with that. So both of these gentlemen, you know, their legacy, aside from helping us all to be healthy and disease prevention, Dr. Greger with his, you know, best-selling book, How Not to Die, etc., and what they're doing behind the scenes in terms of, you know, in Dr. Greger's case, in, you know, all of the proceeds of all the many things that he does, you know, going to charities and whatnot to really help, you know, help our sentient beings, help those that, you know, that don't have a voice, our beautiful four-legged friends, helping them not to have to go through a lifetime of unimaginable suffering. So that, Genevieve, I know that will speak to your heart as well. Oh, yes. Somebody said, I love the groats bread by Dr. Greger recipe. Yeah, he shows you how to make a groats bread. And so there's just so much great stuff in here. All right. Yes, thank you. Somebody said, and I can't see your name because it just says Facebook user, but hi, Mary Lou. You know, I think the lady, it was Elle, what you said about thyroid, I just go and dig into some of the research on that, both from Dr. Greger and from Dr. Neil Barnard about thyroid, because I think you might be surprised of what you can, that you can be whole food plant-based. Yes, deficient in iodine. You know, if you're worried about your thyroid, anybody, a lot of people have Hashimoto's, a lot of people have low thyroid function. It's so common, it's almost epidemic. You are fine with eating all the foods that Dr. Greger recommends in everything that he does, and in this cookbook, and the soy products as well. You can totally have soy, but you just need to make sure that you have enough iodine. That's really important, really important. But again, there's a fine line. You don't want too much iodine. So just be very careful that with anything, there can be too much of a good thing. So whether it's with selenium, whether it's iodine, particularly with, you know, your minerals, those two in particular, iron, there can be too much. So it really is just getting your levels absolutely right. And, you know, if you're a little bit lost in the woods with that, one of the books that I recommend that you look into is, I had her on not very long ago, is called Nourish. It's a book called Nourish, and Dr. Brenda Davis, her name escaped me for a moment, talks a lot. She's not a doctor, but she's a she's written, goodness, 15 books on supplementation for you know, plant-based and vegans and whatnot. So she's got a lot of books out there, but her latest one is called Nourish. It's particularly good if you've got children, kids, babies, if you're a mum, because it's written with a pediatrician. But she really goes into the exact amounts and gets into the nitty-gritty of that, so you can go and check that out too. All right, so that's it from me. Thank you for joining me, staying on, getting some questions answered, and the lovely Dr. Greger on his treadmill. I've got to go do my exercise now because I haven't got in my cardio today. So those of you in the Ignite program and Glow Up know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm off to do that. Then I'm going to go check out my ribollita soup as cooked from Dr. Greger's cookbook, which is bubbling away in my 360 slow cooker. So exercise, a ribollita soup in a slow cooker, and I'm I'm good to go. Have a beautiful, beautiful holidays. If I don't see you before then, I'm not probably going to be doing, I'll be taking a little bit of time off from doing my regular lives. So for those of you who aren't in my group and aren't in my program, if I don't see you before then, have an absolutely beautiful, beautiful holiday week next week. And I will see you in the new year. Bye-bye, everybody.